The diner always smelled of coffee and fresh bread each morning. Emma Taylor wiped down the tables at Riverside Cafe. Copyright, readying for the breakfast rush. At 29, she'd been here 6 years, ever since she'd left nursing school to care for her sick mother. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago, leaving Emma with grief, debt, and a steady but modest job. Still, she found comfort in the rhythm of the diner, the clinking of cups, the hum of conversation, and the familiar faces that made her feel connected to something larger than herself. Her favorite regular was Mr. Albert Pearson, an 83-year-old widower who came in every morning at 7:30 sharp. He always ordered black coffee, wheat toast, and scrambled eggs, then sat by the window reading his newspaper as the city woke up. Over the years, Emma had learned his story. He'd once owned a thriving manufacturing business, but age and loneliness had left him fragile. His wife had been gone for a decade, and his grandson rarely visited. The diner had become his only refuge. "Morning, Mr. Pearson," Emma said warmly as she placed his order on the table. "Better now that I'm here, my dear," he said with a faint smile, his hands trembling slightly as he lifted his cup. "You always brighten my mornings, and you brighten mine," she replied softly. Over time, Emma began doing little extras for him, keeping his coffee warm, adding a bit more to his plate, sitting with him during slow hours to listen to his stories. Her co-workers thought she was wasting time on an old man who tipped sparingly, but Emma didn't care. Albert reminded her of her late grandfather, and making his day better made hers meaningful. One morning, he looked weaker than usual, his hands shaking as he tried to butter his toast. "Here, let me help," she said gently. "You're too kind to an old man," he murmured, eyes glistening. "Most people don't even see me anymore, but you do." "You matter, Mr. Pearson," Emma said, squeezing his hand. "You always have." 2 weeks later, he didn't show up. In all the years she'd known him, he'd never missed a morning. When he didn't answer her calls, Emma convinced her manager to let her go check on him. His apartment was only a few blocks away. She knocked several times before trying the door. It was unlocked. Albert was on the floor, conscious but too weak to move. "Oh God, hold on," Emma said, calling 911 immediately. She slid a pillow under his head and held his hand until help arrived. "You came," he whispered. "I knew you would." "Of course I did. Your family to me." At the hospital, Emma called his emergency contact to his grandson. "My name's Emma Taylor," she said. "Your grandfather fell and is at Memorial Hospital. He's stable, but he needs family." There was a pause. "I'm in a meeting," came the annoyed reply. "Can't the hospital handle it?" Emma's voice shook with anger. "He's been on his floor for hours." "He needs you." "I'll come when I can," the man said flatly before hanging up. Emma stayed through the night. The doctor said Albert had fractured his hip and would need surgery and rehab. "You should go home," Albert whispered. "Not a chance," Emma said. "You're not going through this alone." She kept her word. Every evening after her shift, she visited, reading to him, helping with meals, cheering him through painful therapy sessions. Staff assumed she was his granddaughter. 5 days later, the grandson finally arrived. He was in his mid-30s, sharply dressed, and clearly uncomfortable in the sterile hospital room. "Grandfather," he said stiffly, "apologies for the delay. Work's been demanding." Albert's expression was cool. "How thoughtful of you to find time." His gaze shifted to Emma. "And this ice a broken bar?" "This is Emma Taylor," Albert said firmly. "She found me after my fall. She's been here every day since." When Emma excused herself, she overheard the grandson's warning voice. "You should be careful. People take advantage of the elderly." She didn't stay to hear the rest. The words stung deeply, but she refused to regret her kindness. 3 days later, Emma walked into Albert's room to find 2 lawyers beside the grandson. "Ms. Taylor," he said coldly, "we have concerns about your relationship with my grandfather." "Concerns?" she repeated. "We believe you may be exerting undue influence," one lawyer said. "Spending excessive time with him, fostering dependency possibly for financial gain." Emma's heart dropped. "That's not true. I've never asked him for anything." Albert's voice rose, frail but fierce. "Enough, Nicholas. Call off your lawyers. This woman saved my life when you couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone." "I'm protecting you," Nicholas snapped. Protecting me from what? From compassion? Albert shot back. She's shown more care in 6 years than you have in 10. Then, with quiet determination, Albert turned to the lawyers. Prepare a document. Emma Taylor will receive a monthly stipend of $5,000 for life, and a trust fund of $1 million. Emma gasped. No, please, I don't want that. I know you don't, Albert said gently. That's why you deserve it. He looked at Nicholas. You've forgotten what matters. You've built your life around money, but this woman, this waitress, understands love and loyalty better than anyone in your world. Learn from her. The room fell silent. Nicholas looked stricken, the lawyers uneasy. Emma wept quietly. Please, don't let this cause more distance between you two, she said softly. Albert smiled sadly. You're a rare soul, my dear, but this isn't about division, it's about teaching him what really matters. Over the following weeks, Nicholas began visiting more often, slowly rebuilding his relationship with his grandfather and with Emma. Their initial tension softened into friendship, then something more. 6 months later, Albert moved to a comfortable assisted living home. Emma visited 3 times a week Nicholas, 4, on his 84th birthday. They gathered in the common room with cake and laughter. You know what makes me happiest? Albert said, looking at them both. Not the money or the business, it's seeing the two of you together in my family, in the truest sense. Nicholas smiled. Emma taught me that success isn't measured in numbers, it's in how we show up for people. Emma blushed. I just brought you breakfast, Mr. Pearson. You did more than that, he said softly. You saw me when the world didn't. You cared. That's love. A year later, Emma returned to nursing school, her education funded by Albert's trust. Nicholas took over the company, reshaping it to value people over profit. And every few mornings, Emma still met Albert for breakfast, and not because she was obligated, but because that's what family does. They show up, they care, because sometimes, a cup of coffee and a kind word can change a life. And sometimes, the people you help end up changing yours. The winter air outside the diner was crisp, the kind that made every breath visible. Emma wiped her hands on her apron as she flipped the sign to closed. She was locking up when she noticed a familiar figure standing on the corner, a small bouquet of daisies in his hand. Nicholas. He looked different from the man who had once walked into his grandfather's hospital room wearing a suit and suspicion. Now, his expression was softer, his posture less guarded. He smiled when their eyes met. Couldn't let you walk home alone, he said, offering her the flowers. And I wanted to thank you again. For a broken bar, well, for everything. Emma took the flowers, surprised by how natural it felt to smile back. You've already thanked me a dozen times. Then this will be 13, he said with a hint of teasing, and maybe the start of a few more. They walked side by side down the quiet street. For a while, they just listened to the sound of their footsteps and the wind rattling the bare trees. Nicholas finally spoke. You know, I used to think success was about control, keeping things predictable, measurable. But the best things that have happened lately, a broken bar. He glanced at her. None of them were planned. Emma smiled softly. Albert used to say that too. He said life gives us people at exactly the right time, even if we don't realize it. Nicholas nodded, his voice low. He talked about you all the time before he went into rehab. Said you'd brought warmth back into his life. I didn't understand what he meant until I started spending time with you. Emma stopped walking. Nicholas, a broken bar. He turned toward her. I mean it. You remind me what it's like to actually see people, to care. You changed the way I live, the way I lead, the way I think. And somewhere between the hospital visits and those early breakfasts, I started realizing I didn't just admire you. Yeah, don't, she whispered gently, her cheeks warm. You don't have to say that. I want to. His eyes searched hers. I've said a lot of things I didn't mean in my life, but Thesa. He stepped closer, his voice soft but certain. This I mean. For a moment, the world went still. The city lights blurred behind them, and Emma felt her heart stutter in her chest. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't wanted anything in return for what she'd done. But looking at him now, she saw not the businessman who once doubted her, but a man learning to love the way his grandfather had taught him, through presence, not perfection. Then let's take it slow, she said finally. I don't want to lose what we already have. Nicholas smiled. Slow sounds perfect. From that night on, They began to meet regularly outside the diner after her shift. Sometimes they'd walk to the river and talk for hours. Sometimes he'd bring her dinner when she was too tired to cook. On weekends, he joined her on her visits to Albert, who watched them both with a knowing glint in his eyes. "Love isn't grand gestures," Albert said one morning as they shared breakfast. "It's showing up. You two already know how to do that." Months passed. Emma finished her nursing degree. Nicholas cheered her on at graduation, and every Sunday they still met Albert at the same corner booth. One spring evening, as the sun set behind the diner windows, Nicholas reached across the table and took her hand. "You changed my grandfather's life," he said softly. "Then you changed mine. I don't know how you did it, but every good thing in my life seems to start with you." Emma's throat tightened. "Maybe it's the coffee," she teased weakly. He laughed, then grew serious again. "It's you, always you." He leaned forward and kissed her, a gentle, tentative, the kind of kiss that feels like a promise more than a declaration. Outside, the city lights flickered to life, and the faint sound of laughter drifted in through the glass. Albert watched them with quiet satisfaction, a small smile on his face. "About time," he murmured. By the time summer arrived, Emma and Nicholas had built something steady, a simple dinners, long talks, shared plans. Their worlds, once so different, had started to weave together. She taught him to slow down. He helped her dream bigger, and together, they made Albert's final years full of laughter and love. When Albert passed away peacefully that autumn, he left them both a note written in shaky handwriting. "Greater than love is not what you say, it's what you do every day. Keep showing up for each other." They framed the note and hung it in the diner, right above the booth by the window. Every morning, Emma placed a cup of black coffee there, just the way Albert liked it. And every morning, Nicholas joined her, their hands brushing as they sat side by side. Love, she realized, wasn't about grand beginnings or perfect timing. It was about staying, about showing up, just like Albert taught them.